Hi folks, it's about 3:15, so I'm going to start the webinar. It's Karen Motzo here. Welcome to Basic Reports in P+ and the questions they answer. Today's October 12th, 2021. Super happy that so many people are still using Performance Plus. I think it's a great tool, and there'll be another iteration of Performance Plus coming out soon from Power School. So we've been talking to them about that. It's called Performance Matters, and it's available now. So that's sort of exciting. But Performance Plus has a special place in my heart. So and I love to use it to triangulate data and to put local data in. So I'm happy to see that you're here. For those of you that don't know us at this point, we are Demonstrated Success. We do a lot of professional development, specifically in New Hampshire, other states, but mostly in New Hampshire. We work at, so those are some of the districts that we have worked in, and there's probably, 5 or 6 dozen more. We have a couple of great state contracts this year that allows us to work with a lot of the state and provide a lot of free support. And then in addition to that, we had a lot of paid support around ELA and math, curriculum and instruction, and culture and climate. And a year ago, and hopefully not again, but if it happens, it happens, a lot of remote learning support. This is me. I am the Director of Professional Development here, and I've been in education for about 30 years. I have a passion for literacy. 6 through 12 literacy is my true passion, K through 5 literacy as well, but most of my experience was 6 through 12. I was a 3rd grade teacher. I was a K through 5 special educator, and I was an RTI coordinator and all sorts of goodies. So this is our first in a series of webinars we will have for Performance Plus this year, and we're super happy to have you. It's already been a tough year, and I'm aware of that. I've been made aware of that by a lot of the principals with whom I have spoken to lately, and I know that for all of you out there, it's a struggle, and it's only October. So thank you for the work you're doing. Try to stay buoyed, and know that we really appreciate you. You're muted because this is a webinar, and you can ask questions in the Q&A. We're going to look at some of the reports, and we're going to do some thinking about what reports to use when. That's what we're going to do today. And I'm going to go live, hopefully at the end if I have time. All right, let's get started. These are your fancy icons at the top of the Performance Plus homepage. You can see here that is the reports icon. Just to give you a little tour of the other icons, this is your homepage, this little house. Then obviously, right, we have the reports. This book, behind that book are your standards. And this is a teacher icon, which somebody who has access to the whole school might need to filter something or look at teachers, but many of you won't have that. This is a class icon, so that allows you to go to your class. This is for individual students, and you can look up individual students behind there. This is goal setting, and don't worry about it. This is Assessment Builder, where you can go in and look at assessment frameworks and create assessment frameworks. So if you have like Fontes and Pinnell and you want to put your Fontes and Pinnell data in there, you can create a framework to hold that data. We can help you with that. We already have frameworks set up for you. This is an item bank content library, CL content library. This is Mal for somebody who's on at the same time as you, but the truth of the matter is, I don't know, it doesn't really ever work. It hasn't worked for me. I've started trying to socialize in the middle, and it wasn't really happening. So you don't have to pay attention to that. This is actually important, where you see these tools. This is your administration icon, and anybody with administrator access has this. And you can look up all of the assessment data that's in Performance Plus for you, the student groups, the students, and it's excellent. But today we're going to talk about reporting. So here we go. this is your home reporting page. All right, so if you go to those lines, those graph lines, and you click it, this is where you get to. And something that you should know, even though it's different on this slide, is that where you see, ready, my reports, these are reports that have been created. They are either reports that you have created and saved, or reports that someone else has created and pushed to you. And as part of that, either an individual from your district can create a report and push to you, or the state has pushed SAS reports to you each year. And your SAS reports are in these folders this year. So where you see New Hampshire SAS 2018, pretend that says 2020, and you'll see when you click on that, your SAS reports. There's by each grade level, there's content areas, there's a lot of variety of SAS reports. So this is that home reporting page. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. This basically tells you in a very basic way what to do. So you're going to go and you choose your report type. Then and what that means is the report type is basically the structure. So am I going to get a pie chart? Am I going to get a line graph? Am I going to get a scatter plot? So that's the type of report. The next filters button helps you to inform the report, right? So under that filters button, you're going to be able to choose the assessment, the content area, what school, the dates. You're going to be able to filter that report for male, female, 1,000 things, IEP status, ELL status. Like there's all sorts of choices behind there in the filters for different ways that you can control the information that goes into whatever report style you want. This last button is called options, and these are tweaks that you can make to the report to help you tailor the information to help you use it. So those are those 3 buttons. Obviously, this says run report, so you're going to click that last to run the report. Now, on the right-hand side, we have the following. This little hand with this little piece of paper, that signifies sharing and saving. So if you create a report and you want to save it and share it with someone, there's your icon. This allows you to download to Excel. This PDF allows you to download PDF. And all the way to the right, that allows you to print a report. Okay. Let's just go to where it says My Reports. On the right-hand side here, you can choose where your reports sit. Okay, so this whole section can go to the bottom or the top, right? It's not that interesting, but you can do that if you want. Okay, to run it, this is now going to go through everything I just said, but that was the summary, and you'll have the visuals now. So go to reports, and when you click on reports, you get 2 options. And this is important and easy to remember, because for now, I suspect whoever you are that's listening to this, you're going to want to use the performance tracker reports. The reason for this is that in the assessment builder reports, I don't know if you can see, but it says item level reports. And under performance tracker, it's proficiency and standards reports. So most of the assessment data that you have in P+, that most of you have in P+, does not go down to the item level, with the exception of the modular assessments. Now, the interim assessment data goes in, and the summative data from SAS goes in. I am not 100% sure. I do not think that your item level data from your modulars goes in, okay? Other item level data could be an end of unit math assessment that you've created, a multiple choice test that you've created, okay? But unless you've been working with me or Heather or Ann Mordecai to create those frameworks and put that data in, I'll bet you don't have item level data, because your STAR data, your NWEA data, your iReady data, those data sources, Dibbles, AimsWeb, they're not aligned to items, okay? Those data sources can be automatically uploaded into Performance Plus. The state does that for you. All you have to do is fill out the paperwork. And I had just sent out last week a email to all Performance Plus users about accessing that paperwork to have your assessments uploaded. Actually, Rebecca did that. So I hope you got that. And if you haven't, shoot me an email. We've housed that paperwork and we've talked to each of the vendors, and you can get that information. So anyway, most of you will be using the performance tracker report formats. So now I've clicked on Performance Tracker, and you can see the reports that I'm going to look at with you today. We are going to look at proficiency level pie chart, comparative report, assessment scores, and any two scatter plots. These are some of the reports we're going to look at today right now. Under Assessment Builder, we're going to look at the item analysis by question and the item analysis by student. Because if you do decide to put in a local assessment that's aligned to items, or even put in your modular assessment data from SAS, then there's some wonderful item level reports here. And when we used to do NECAP, when we first started using Performance Plus, we could get items at NECAP because it wasn't a responsive assessment. So all the kids got the same items. But because most of the assessments we're using lately are responsive to the student, in other words, if a student gets something wrong, they get a different answer from the student next to them. They get a different next question than the student next to them who may have gotten it right. And then the two students' paths, right, diverge. And that's what that means. That's responsive. So we're going to talk right now about individual student reports. So go to students. And in here, you are going to be able to search for a student using all of these different drop downs. Something I want to emphasize to you is that the less information you put in here, the better, because there's a lot of room for misspelling and other mistakes that will keep you from getting access to the student that you're looking for. What I often do is I'll just put in, I'll put in the student's last name, right? And if it's Smith and there's, 50 Smiths in your school district, that's, right? So I might put in a grade. So that'll narrow it down to just a few, and then you can click on the student. So I'm going to show you now. That's exactly what, right? So I put in Smith, all right? And this is also the John Smith database because it's de-identified. So everyone will be Smith, but let's pretend that everyone's not Smith. And let's say I put in John Smith, and there's 4 John Smiths amongst, however many Michael Schwartzes, Karen Matzos, and so on. So I can click, all of these are live links, and I can then drill down. You'll see the student code, you'll see the school building and the grade and the student's grade level. And then you drill down and you get to the student detail page. Whoops, sorry about that. So most schools don't have student photos uploaded. Many of you will not have the capacity to edit the student detail page. That capacity is saved for usually a select few in the district. But you can see up here a lot of demographic information on that student, and that's what's in there for every student. We have, where is it? SSC, State Student Code. Okay, this is the student's SACID. So that's an important piece of information. Oh, sorry, this is the student SACID up here. And I guess they're the same, student code and state student code. But that's their SACID number. And sometimes you'll need that. And the performance tracker ID is a different number altogether. So just keep that in mind in the back of your head somewhere. There is a tool in here called the ILP, but you only have the ILP for your students if your school district paid for it. And what the ILP is, it's a separate module that allows you to create individual goals. It's like an individualized learning plan, basically. So underneath that top part that I just showed you on the student detail page, where all that demographic data is different sections. You can see those sections right here. You see this purple line, this lavender line. This actually outlines all the sections, and you can click on any of these to jump on the page to get down there. You can also filter the student detail page for any of the years historically where the student has data. So if I only wanted to see information from 1920, I would click 1920, and so on and so forth. But whoops. Part of the power of the student detail page is that, and in this case, this is what we're showing, is that you can get a whole historical picture of that student's performance all in one place. And I like that. And right here, you can see that where it says assessments, this darker purple line, where it says subject filter, you can filter for math or ELA or science, okay? And you can choose to include only national assessment data or only state data or only local data. Again, I think the beauty of this page is being able to see the student's history. And we can look here, and so if you start at the top, you see that for this particular student, the school uses the STAR assessment. And we can see this student's grades, or scores rather, in grade 1, grade 2 for STAR. And then we see in grade 3 where it's highlighted in yellow, we see the SAS. So we can see this whole history, and clearly this kid's rocking it, which is really lovely. Underneath the assessments section, there's a class section that shows you all of this student's classes in each grade level and their teacher. You can also, and some high schools have done this, you can also upload their grades. Beneath the class section, you have the student groups, and you can see on the top that there is that green bar, and the green bar says active. And those will represent all of the groups that that student is in for this particular active year. And these slides were made last year, so it says 2019, but it would say 2021. Underneath there are the students' inactive groups, meaning this is the groups that the student was in the past. And this is very interesting. And when you're looking at this information about a student, if you have a student sitting in front of you and, you know, for instance, you get the feeling that the student is a pretty curious kid, is pretty alert, executive functioning seems okay, but they're not quite getting it, or there seems to be some sort of gap, you can come here and look at their history. And what you might notice, if we look up here where it says absences, number of days, 5 days in a year. So this means in 1 year. And you can go over across and see it says 2015, then it says 2016, 2017. That's per year, right? So this particular student was absent 5 times in the whole year, and that's no big deal, right? But if you start to see numbers like 15, 10, 15, 20, for a year and then another year, then you start to sort of create a hypothesis that the student hasn't actually had that much school time, that they have gaps because of absences. Or you can come down here and it says number of schools attended. NBR is number of schools attended. And it's great when that says 1, right? So this student in 2015, 16, 17 attended 1 school. But if I were to look at that and see that a student attended 2 schools in 2015 and 3 schools in 2016, then already I'm getting a picture. I'm like, oh, this child has missed a lot of school and has moved around in a lot of places. And that might be the reason for learning gaps. This student probably doesn't have a learning disability. What this student has is learning gaps. Then you keep going down and it talks about promotion. It'll let you know whether a student has been promoted or not. There's another variable here that you can't see in this particular slide, but it has to do with a risk, high, medium, or low risk. And that starts, I think, in grade 5. It starts to the algorithm brings in absenteeism, it brings in the student scores on the state test, it brings in IEP status, a socioeconomic status, and it gives that student a risk ranking out of 20, right? And the closer you get to 20, the higher risk. And then it tells you at the end, you can see at the bottom, it's blocked out, the town where a student comes from and so on. So there's a lot of information. These categories or these student groups get updated. For instance, like IEP status would be on here, and that will be updated. I think it's somewhere, I think it's twice a year. Now it used to be once a year in October. So it's for the whole year. I mean, nothing on the student groups is going to be updated more frequently than 2 or 3 times a year. So it's a longitudinal view as opposed to like something where you can track a student's absences during the year. It's, over a longer period of time. Underneath the student groups, you can see up here where it says interventions, and that we're going to go over in a different webinar. But the main idea is that basically whatever interventions you're doing with a specific student, this is a great place to do your progress monitoring. There's a place for notes underneath, and what you need to remember is that this is a record that stays with the student for a very long time, K through 12, and you want to make sure that you would never write anything that student's parents wouldn't be okay seeing, right? Or that student wouldn't be okay seeing in 12th grade. So like, if they had an accident in 2nd grade, they don't want that in their record when they're a senior. Of course, something you have to know is that parents don't access this without your knowledge. Parents legally obviously can and can access this, and some districts can arrange to have that be a piece. Nobody is seeing this outside of the school district. And depending on your permissions, for instance, so if you are a teacher at an elementary school, you might have class-only access, and that means you can only see information on your class. You might have building access, which means you can see students in the whole building. Your principal will have building access. The superintendent will have district access. But outside of your district, no one is ever looking at this data. I mean, the state can, but doesn't spend a lot of time in there. So anyway, we keep going down. School building history, very helpful because you can see where a student has come and gone, and the same with their district history. So we're going to talk about the student assessment summary here. And what this is this is a report. I don't know whether you noticed, but it's a report under Performance Tracker. And what this gives you is an assessment summary, exactly what it sounds like. It's for a single student, which in this case seems to be Susie Smith, and she's currently in grade 5, and it will give you a summary of her assessment data. So you can see here that this student, this is her SBAC data up top. And then she had underneath there is a local assessment. So that was a state assessment. Then she has a local assessment down here, and it's 4th grade fact fluency. And then at the bottom, she has a mid-year math assessment. These are local assessments that were put into Performance Plus. Then we have her ELA data, right? And so on and so forth. So this is like a, if you were going to a student support meeting or an IEP meeting or any sort of, or a parent-teacher conference, right? You could print that out and share that with the parent. And here's another example. I'm gonna just show you over here, just to point this out. The student score is black and the state score is clear, right? So if we take this down, little John Doe is about on par with the state in math. For his addition fact fluency, for this local assessment, he's on par with his, in this case, it would be the district. It's not going to be the state, it's going to be his district because this is a local assessment. But if we come down here to multiplication, fact fluency out of 64 questions, you can see that the average in his district was higher than what John Doe mastered. We're going to talk some more about performance tracker reports. The first thing we're going to look at is a proficiency pie chart. And I'll tell you, we always do in our training proficiency pie chart first because it's a pie chart. Pie charts are friendly. So if you are introducing this to your staff, I would suggest to always go with the pie chart first. It does indeed offer a great visual of percentages at each level, and you can show multiple assessments, sections, and years at once because you'll get a separate pie chart for each. And this is what it looks like. So the blue is level 4, and that's your highest level. And it looks like in this scenario, 21 students were level 4, and that's proficient with distinction or above proficient, right? Level 3 is usually proficient, and whatever the language is of the assessment will be reflected in the assessment framework in Performance Plus. So sometimes it'll say level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. Sometimes it'll say proficient, partially proficient. Sometimes it'll say beginning, getting there, proficient, exemplary, whatever your language is. But just remember that in Performance Plus, blue's excellent, green is very good. You don't have to worry. Yellow, you probably need to flag somebody because they're not quite proficient, and red is you got to help that student. So that's sort of the rule. You can see here the number of students in the middle column and then the percent of students to the right. When you click on any piece of the pie in real life, so if I were to click on these 13, this section of the pie, I would actually get the list of those students. And we have grade 3, grade 4, and grade 5. And I think what this is getting at is you can create these for a cohort, for example. You can create these for each grade level. So you can filter to to keep the cohort, a group of students who you could track. So if we went from 2017 to 2018 to 2019, we would have three, 4, 5. We could limit it to a cohort to see their growth, okay? But in this scenario, since it's the same year, we have, you know, the report for third grade, the SAS report for, or SBAC in this situation, for fourth grade, and then for fifth grade. All right. Something you need, there's lots of things you need to know about the standards bar chart and all of the standards reports. It's a little bit the same as the items. Not a lot of our reports are aligned. Oh, some of them are, some of them aren't, okay? But the report will only work if the frameworks are set up a specific way, if they're aligned to the standards. And you again have to, if you have questions that get points for yes or no, or others that say explain your answer. So like if a yes, no is worth 1 point and an explain the answer is worth 3 points, they may have, their weights may vary and it could throw this report off. And this is true for all reports. So the assessment section report will show you within a given assessment what the students did best and, you know, mid and average and weakest on. So for instance, if I'm creating a report, let me think about it. I'll explain it in terms of a rubric, right? If I have a rubric that has elaboration, organization, and grammar, those are 3 sections in our rubric, right? This report will show you, in this example, we have the sections are aligned: operations and algebraic thinking, numbers and operations, measurement and data, geometry. So the framework was created so that all of the questions that are aligned to operations and algebraic thinking, and in my mind, I think about it in terms of organization for writing, all of the questions or everything a student had to do would be aligned to that particular section. And this shows you, it seems, right, that the strongest section would be geometry in this report. So on this assessment, whatever mysterious assessment this is reflecting, students did the best in geometry, and it seems they need help with operations and algebraic thinking. And we can scroll down here to the chart beneath it to check our observations. So it says operations and algebraic thinking, 47, right, if we round, % of kids were got % of max. This is interesting. So if there were 71 kids, 46 were, it says total out of 71. I'm trying to figure out if there were 71 questions. I'm going to give you 2 options, and I'm going to have to get back to you. It's either 46% of kids were successful, but what I think actually is that of all of the questions, right, 46.18% students got less than half of the total points possible. And over here, if you look in geometry, student got 80, almost 82% of points possible, okay? Or it could be the percentage of students. I'm sorry. I'm just looking at this the first time and I'm having a memory lapse. Bear with me. I'll get you that information. And we go down here, same, right? So we can see basically, no matter what, that the weakest area is division and fact fluency, right? So students did the weakest in this and the strongest in addition for fact fluency, which makes complete rational sense. Okay. This is a science example. Again, inquiry. And this is reminiscent of real data because that is usually how it pans out. Okay, next, assessment scores. This is a report that we use a lot. The report is laid out like a spreadsheet, sort of. You can see scores for multiple students. So the students go down the left, and the assessments or the assessment information goes across the top, the categories. It's really good for tracking your class from year to year. It's really good at looking at multiple assessments to slice and dice students and see how they're performing. You can have multiple sections from assessments. You can have overall sections for different assessments. It's good to triangulate data. It can be used to group students, and it's a very useful report. And this is the way it looks. The student names are blocked out. When the report is generated, the report comes out in alphabetical order by name. And you can see to the right that there's the level. So it's individual. So I'm going to go back to the other report. It's the total number of students is 71. So what I'm going to show you here, I'm sorry, but I'm going to go back and answer my own question. It says at the bottom over here, there's 71 students. Okay. And because I'm sure that this was all done in the same report. So this is 71 students, and only 46% of those students were mastered. Okay. All right, back to where we were. So here we have 71 kids, and you can see here, green is good, adequate understanding, red, we're worried, minimal understanding, and nope, 71, I have to contradict myself, 71 points. So this is the score. This student got 56 out of 71 points, 43 out of 71 points. Forget what I said earlier about the assessment sections. We'll go back to that, but I'm sure of the assessment scores report. So 56 points out of 71 points. And we can see like the cut scores here. So the cuts, so this student got 50 out of a possible 71 points. This student got 52, the yellow. So the cut scores for the sections, right? If this student got a 54 and had adequate understanding, and this student got a 53 and had partial understanding, then the cut point to go on to the next section from partial understanding to adequate understanding must have been a 53. Okay, so the students' names are down the left-hand side. You can sort this report by any of the columns. So you can sort it by student name, you can sort it by the numeric score as well. You can sort it from high to low or low to high by pressing on that little arrow. This is low to high. So in this sample, we have a singular assessment. What you were just looking at is one assessment with only the overall score being shown. What you see here is a single end of year math assessment with each of the sections being reflected. The student name is blocked off on the left. You can see the operations and algebraic thinking section, the numbers and operations base 10 section, numbers and operations in base 10 fractions, measurement and data. So each of these is a section on that end of year assessment. I can sort for any of these categories. I can sort by operations and algebraic thinking. So if I wanted to do or review or work with a bunch of kids and it was May and I wanted to go back, I would sort and I would choose all of the kids in the red category and design a targeted 20-minute lesson for them. I would choose the kids in the yellow category and design a 20-minute targeted lesson for them, and I would be able to differentiate that way. And that's what this report's really good for. Okay, and this is just showing you how you can report, you can sort it by sections. This is showing you total number of points. Okay, so 64 points out of 76 points. This student got 29 points out of 59 points. I'm just going across the top. It's the same student, right? Because their name is blocked out. And at the end of year, and this is 2000. So let's go back for a second. Sorry. The very first row at the top, we see second grade, and then we see end of year math assessment. And then third grade, end of year 2016, fourth grade, end of year 2017. So each of these assessments is a different year, different end of year math assessment. This end of year math assessment had a total of 76 points. This in 2016, it had a total of 59 points. And in 2017, it had a total of 71 points. So you're looking at 3 different assessments, one in each year at the end of each year. On the left-hand side is a student name. Let's say it's Joanna Smith. Okay, so Joanna Smith in second grade scored 64 out of 76 points. Not second grade, in fourth grade, sorry. Second grade. Second grade scored 64 out of 76 points. In third grade, got 29 out of 59 points. And in fourth grade, got 63 out of 71 points. So it's sort of funky that some of these kids just seem all over the place. Like I'm looking at the kid 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down, and this student's got a 69 out of 76, and then a 41, and then a 56. It's very, very interesting. So anyway, the final year is sorted, by the way. So it's sorted by the final year. Okay. So you can track a student and how well they're doing. You know, in this instance, it's their end of the year assessment 3 years in a row for a specific group of students. Okay, any 2 scatter plots. This is a fun report. You're able to compare on a scatter plot grid, right? The axis, an X and Y axis, 2 different specific pieces of data. And it's really great. We've run this a lot where you see the second bullet where it says allows you to see if 2 assessments are aligned. We've run this a lot with NWEA, NSAS, STAR, NSAS, iReady, and SAS, just to see how predictive those assessments are of success on the state assessment. This last bullet allows you to see if students are scoring at similar levels on 2 different assessments that allegedly are assessing the same skills, right? So this is one of our favorite reports. Keeping in mind, right, that the red section is below proficient and the blue is proficient with distinction in some way, in some wording that might differ per test. You can see here on the vertical axis that we have New Hampshire SAS grade 4, 2019, and we have math, and then we have New Hampshire SAS grade 3, 2018. And this is a cohort, okay? So this is how well the same students did on these 2 different assessments each year, okay? And you see there's a really nice correlation here because it mimics a straight line, which is good, all right? And when you click on any one of these dots, that's an individual student, and you can see their actual score for each of those years. This student way up in the right-hand corner has done extraordinarily well both years. If we go down to the student in the bottom left, this student is struggling, and all of the students in this red box right here are students that have been substantially below proficient for 2 years in a row on their SAS assessments. Now, if I go up to, on the vertical axis, if you see 461.4, and those are scale scores, and you see how it's kind of partially yellow, but a little bit red in that line right there, these are students for whom, for their 4th grade SAS, they were in the partially proficient category. But in their 3rd grade math SAS, they're still in the red zone, okay? So they did better on their 4th grade SAS than they did on their 3rd grade math SAS. If you travel over on that same bar and you see where it's yellow, hardcore yellow both ways, all of those students were in the partially proficient range, both in their 3rd grade and their 4th grade math SAS. This star is the average. So for this particular group of kids, right there, we have a level 2, okay, as the average score on both of these assessments. Now, if I keep going to the right, it turns into green. So we have over to the right-hand side, we're starting to move from the yellow on grade 3 into the green on the grade 3 SAS. So now you're looking at kids who were yellow in grade 4 and green in grade 3. So they actually went down, and there's nobody in that box. Okay. But if I go up to the bright green box, that square right there, those are kids that were proficient on both. And if I go up to that blue box in the upper right corner, those are kids that were proficient with this distinction. And that's the way you read this graph. So this assessment scatter plot graph is showing you the correlation of how kids did in math and EL versus ELA. Okay, and it's interesting because this is much more all over the place, right? Which would make sense, because just because a student's strong in math or weak in math doesn't mean they're going to be strong or weak in ELA. I mean, some of that is correlated, but you can see that there's much more variation here. And again, each of these dots is students. And if you click on it when we're live, you can see the actual scores. You can also filter this, and we can talk about this in future webinars, so that you can make your ELL students a different color, your special education students a different color, so that you can see comparisons between different demographics and student groups. Okay, comparative report achievement levels. This is the report format that we use for the New Hampshire SAS. So you'll see in the push reports that I alluded to, remember I told you that when you go into the reporting icon, you will see pushed reports that are your SAS reports from this year. And these reports are in the format of the comparative report. And they're just terrific. They're just a really easy way to look at the percentages of each level. They show you a table underneath. You can compare grades, assessment sections, different schools, years. And again, yeah, we use them for our SAS reports. And this is what it looks like. Okay, so this is your ELA SAS top, and that's the overall score. And if any of you have been to any of our SAS workshops, the overall score is broken into 4 sections. So working from the right, we have our substantially below, and then we have our approaching proficient is yellow, and then proficient is green, and then above proficient is blue. And so you can see the percentage of students. So 24.5% of kids this year's 2019, from where this is from, were below proficient. 27.1 were above proficient. Now, reading literary text and reading informational text, those are broken into 3 categories because there's less questions, and they're statistically, you can't come to conclusions in as many buckets is the layman's summary of that, because there's just not enough items for reliable conclusions if you were to divide them into 4 buckets. And you can see here that we have each of the sections. When you generate this report, you can choose which sections will come out in your report. And you see this nice chart. Anne Mordecai, my lovely colleague, and I have fights all the time, but not really. She prefers this bar graph, and I prefer the chart underneath. And then the chart underneath, this is a, you can see that there's 11,000 students, 615 students. So this is a statewide report right here. That's why there's so many kids. And you can see the percent, but then you also see the actual numbers. And I like to see that in the SAS reports because I want to see, since it's a responsive assessment, I like to see how many students got questions in a particular area, because then it gives me some insight around what's emphasized on the assessment. Those are the reports that we just talked about. We talked about the assessment sections bar chart. We talked about the proficiency level pie chart, the comparative report achievement levels, assessment scores, and any two scatter plots. Okay, we're going to talk just briefly about a couple of assessment builder reports. We have about 10 minutes, a little less than 10 minutes. These item analysis by question, which is awesome. Just lets you determine what questions the students had the most trouble with, and it lets you view the questions. And then this is it. Again, you won't be able to get this unless you set this up, unless you set up an assessment framework where your items are aligned and in performance tracker. So, or you have an item level assessment. So looking at this, let's start in the upper left corner. This is the question. You see where it says click here to view. You can view the question, which is utterly lovely. You can only view the question, however, if you set it up that way. On the right-hand side, you see that it's aligned to a specific content standard. And then in the bottom left, you see where it says answer correct, count, frequency, view students. Clearly, the correct answer is C, and 34 students chose C, and that's 77.3% of the students. And then where it says click here to view, you can get a list of the students. Now, going across to the right, there's a graphic representation of what I just told you. Content library is a whole different bag of wax, and that is the item bank that I showed you at the beginning. I showed you an icon where there was a C and an L, and that's the icon that takes you into content library. And again, we'll deal with that on a different webinar. So I think that this is an interesting item. I'm hoping that all of you that are looking at this are thinking, E was the correct answer, and 527 kids chose B, but wait a second, 434 kids chose A. So there's a very consistent misunderstanding that's happening here. And I would take that item and reteach it through the lens of whatever misunderstanding. I would go and look at the item, I would figure out what the misunderstanding is, and then I would drive my reteaching or develop my reteaching around that. So that's why this is really a great way to look at data. And, you know, if you're not in Performance Plus, you're doing that with anything. You're doing that with the modular items, you know, to look for those misunderstandings really, really formative. Okay, this is just another example. So this one is just a slightly different. It's also an item analysis by question. The reason that the graph is different colors is because it's more of a rubric question where there's a certain number of points available. And let's say however many points, it doesn't really matter. But if you look down at the bottom, it says 100%. So only one student got 100% of the available points. 11 students got 75% of available points. So if this is, let's say it's worth 4 points, That means that 11 students got 3 of the points, 7 students got 2 points, 12 students got 1 point, and 13 students got 0 points. So it's just a different type of question, and it's instead of a right or wrong, it's a points available. The next report is an item analysis by student. It gives you a list of students, and it allows you to see which students struggled the most on which questions, is basically the takeaway here. So it comes out with your student name listed down the left-hand side, and across the top are the items. And it's pretty self-explanatory at this point. And it seems that the slides that we've developed are working off of the same assessment, because there's 71 possible points. And this shows you that, Joanne Smith up here, let's pretend, got 56 out of 71 points. But this would be in alphabetical order. So her name would be Appleby. Joan Appleby got 56 out of 71 points. And if you go across, you can see she got the first one correct. She got 1 point for the second one. She got no points for 3, no points for 4, no points for 5, no points for 6, 1 point for 7, and so on. So it's a pretty cool and basic report. However, you can sort it different ways to make it more effective. So you can sort it by overall score. And what that does, it puts your highest performing students at top, or your lowest performing students at top. However, if you press it once, it goes from low to high. And if you press it twice, again, it goes from high to low. So that's one way to look at this report, so that you can group easily, right? You can very quickly see who did what. Another way to sort it is by correct answer frequency. So you can see across the top, this is so cool, I love this, that the very first, you're sorting it so that the items will go across the top in the order of like 100% of kids got item 38, I think it is. And 93.9% got item 58, all right? And so on and so forth. So you can see that the percent correct answer frequency goes down. So this is a great way to look by item and see you're a little less interested in individual student at this point, but you're looking at the assessment as an assessment to see conceptually what kids got and what kids didn't get. And this is the bottom half, right? So this is when we start to get to, this is what it looks like when 27% of kids got it correct. And down all the way to the right, 9% of kids got this 24/7B. 9% of kids got it correct, which means almost nobody. And you can see that reflected in the number of red squares. I'm going to stay on for a little bit at the end for questions, and feel free to ask. I want to let you know that we have some more webinars lined up. I'm not going to go live today because it is now 4:15 and the webinar is over, but I can come on and do a demo and a half an hour on basic reporting anytime live on your site. Like, we can go into your data, your P+ account, and we can work together and start to generate reports together. I'm happy to do that anytime. So just shoot me an email. And next Tuesday, October 12th, we'll have another, sorry, that's today. Next Thursday, October 21st, we'll talk about the student detail page and the intervention progress monitoring. I will almost definitely go live because I'm going to want to show you how to interact with the student detail page and the intervention module. And I think I'm going to add some reporting onto that and just show you the basics of reporting. And then Thursday, November 4th, we're going to talk about leveraging local assessments. All right, so I hope to see you. And you can register right on our website. So if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, you just go to PerformancePLUS subscribers. And what will come up is the image from the upper left on this slide. And that's a live link for you to register right there. Thanks. Just reach out to Heather, reach out to me. We can answer any questions. And I feel like Performance Plus for me is almost involuntary at this point. It's been a long time, and I'm just very happy to help anybody use it. I think it's a great tool. So thanks much, and we'll see you hopefully at the next webinar. Have a really good day. Take care. Bye, folks.